Auschwitz, the place where work doesn't set you free, despite its cynical, illusionary assurance overarching the entrance to atrocities. Perhaps the most notorious of all Nazi concentration camps, Auschwitz was constructed with the sole objectives of total annihilation, cold-blooded dehumanization, and erosion of human dignity. Its three subdivisions in the Polish town Auschwitz, Auschwitz I, Auschwitz II-Birkenau, the main extermination factory for corpses, and Auschwitz III Monowitz, a labor camp, remain the largest modern-day cemetery where human remains and personal belongings are still discovered in present days. The Holocaust, also known as the Shoah, itself means complete mass destruction by fire. Indeed, that was the fatal destiny of those perishing in the merciless system of gas chambers and crematoria. The ashes of hundreds of thousands have become one with Auschwitz soil, forever trapping prisoners' remains, having stripped them of their individuality and confined their existence and identification to a tattooed serial number. An audio system announces victim names, since the museum aims to name as many people as possible and attribute remembrance to them as individual sufferers of the Shoah. The Nazi concentration camp system traces its foundations back to the 1930s, originally admitting political and ideological opponents to the Nazi regime, such as intellectuals and communists, those with disabilities and inherent reproductive issues, asocial people, such as the mentally unstable and substance abusers, Jehovah's Witnesses, criminals and convicts, and people with different sexual orientation. During the unfolding of the Second World War, Auschwitz's population was enlarged with Soviet prisoners of war, whereas racial and ethnic profiling proliferated the deportation and cleansing rationales for the genocidal final solution to the Jewish question. Over 1.1 million people from all across Europe became casualties to the menace of Auschwitz after their forced deportations. Notable minorities included the 1 million Jews from the likes of Poland, Hungary, Germany, the Netherlands, and other European states, alongside Poles and Roma. Prisoners were issued with color-coded badges depending on their background. Red was associated with political prisoners. Pink was attributed primarily to homosexuals. Black grouped asocial elements. Purple was for Jehovah's Witnesses. Brown marked the Roma, and double triangles distinguished the Jews. All these groups cohabited in barracks with unimaginable conditions. Almost everyone suffered from diarrhea and various other infectious diseases, and rats meandered in between the hundreds crammed onto the wooden beds. Those who could not endeavour more were sent to the gas chambers, but in some cases people themselves approached the electrified barbed wire fences. Dead or alive, prisoners had to be present at the daily roll calls, the longest of which spanned across 19 hours. Otherwise, the non-present and escapees jeopardized fatal consequences for the other inmates, beatings, hangings, and public executions by the wall of death. There lies a series of rooms with material proof of crimes against humanity. Gas canisters, glasses, over 40,000 pairs of shoes, prosthetic limbs, suitcases, plates, cups, bowls. Auschwitz I also displays human hair the Nazis incorporated into ropes, brushes, and fabric. Prisoner profiles were archived at Auschwitz I until a certain point, but this practice was discontinued due to its administrative burden. Staring at them, one observes ordinary people with lives of their own, ordinary people with families, ambitions, and careers, though ordinary people with a tragically unordinary end. The photos of Maria Krajewska and her twin sister Czesława Krajewska capture one's attention. Even more so when realizing that Maria's life was taken on May the 23rd, 1943, exactly 81 years ago to the day of visiting the concentration camp. Twins were involved in the experiments of the chief medical officer known as the Angel of Death, Josef Mengele. Mengele conducted highly questionable scientific experiments in the fields of genetics, reproduction, and hereditary diseases in search of the key to the most efficient reproduction of the Aryan race. His focus was also on children, pregnant women, people with physical disabilities and mental instabilities, and those suffering from dwarfism. According to eyewitnesses, he performed amputations and injected chemicals and acids without anesthesia. He dyed eyeballs, purposefully infected his victims with diseases, kept people out for hours in the cold and dunked them into boiling water afterwards, performed blood transfusion between twins and sterilizations, even ripping out the nervous system of one of his victims without anesthesia. And most abhorrently, although not officially confirmed, he sewed up 2 twins, most likely of Roma origin, and created Siamese twins himself. According to other testimonies, he even lured children with sweet treats, and unaware of their fate, they referred to him as Uncle. Birkenau is noteworthy both for its 20 times larger landmass and train tracks, illustrating the importance of the widespread train system for the Holocaust. In the middle of the camp is situated an original part of a train composition. Such wagons were intended for animals and not for humans. The journeys in them lasted for days, with hundreds of people stuffed into one carriage. The lack of sanitation and hygiene was reduced to a bucket, and a sizable part of the resettled died during the transit from contagious diseases, lack of oxygen, and physical pressure in the crowded carts. Momentary relief bestowed upon the journey survivors after disembarking the train compositions and the hardships of their journeys. The German Schutzstaffel and the camp doctor divided the new arrivals into 2 columns, suitable for work and immediately to be sent to the gas chambers. The language barrier and the officers' shouts further contributed to the confusion among the prisoners. The Germans lied to the newcomers that they had to be bathed. They even installed shower heads in the gas chambers to reinforce the disinfection decoy. Instead of water, Zyklon B was released, a lethal gas that sucked the life out of the prisoners for up to 20 minutes while they were still conscious. The longest-serving Auschwitz I commandant, Rudolf Höss, who stood behind the introduction of Zyklon B and the gassing of 430,000 Jews in just 56 days as part of Operation Höss, inhabited a villa together with his 5 children only meters away from one of the crematoria. Nowadays, a gallows serves as a reminder of his execution by hanging next to one of the gas chambers. The Nazis began their deconstruction work at the camp as early as November 1944 as a preventive measure against the unveiling of their crimes against humanity and the destruction of valuable evidence that could be used in future trials against them. A few days before the advancement of the Red Army, barracks were set on fire to accelerate their extinguishment before embarking on resettlement death marches. Meanwhile, Nazis were already fleeing to South America via their rat lines. In Auschwitz, people remained in extremely grinding conditions, which provoked horror, outrage and disgust in the Red Army on January 27, 1945, the Auschwitz Liberation Day. The Russians battled the Germans in Auschwitz, emancipating Monowitz, then Auschwitz I, and finally Birkenau. Alexander Vorontsov, whose original footage is still available today, was instrumental to filming the state of Auschwitz encountered by the Russians. The Holocaust is an invaluable lesson for humanity demonstrated by ordinary members of the public against the inhumane targets of the Nazi regime in Germany and its spheres of influence. Its generational trauma will forever remain part of human history and an indelible scar on European affairs. The Shoah's impact cannot be reversed or appropriately redressed. With the passing of time, the last Holocaust and concentration camp survivors will no longer be present to voice their story, so humanity should never disregard the atrocities inflicted upon millions of innocent and forcibly displaced people in places like Auschwitz, Treblinka, Dachau, Stutthof, and Bergen-Belsen. Auschwitz is a lesson for humankind that it ought to actively stand against the reoccurrence of such brutalities.